All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have an absolute legend today, Michael. I just want to start by saying this one for myself, selfishly, is going to help me out a lot. And you just asked me before we press record, what are we going to talk about today? And in particular, for myself, Michael, I've really struggled a lot with being the monotone guy. My tonality is pretty bad. I've never had a coach before. I've never really done anything in terms of like voice lessons, etc. For yourself, I stumbled upon your profile and I saw that you previously used to do opera and your dad was in theater and your background is very tailored to voice and sound. So I just wanted to talk to you about some things that potentially maybe can help me out and also the audience watching this to help out with tonality and confidence, etc.
Let's dive in, dude. And just for the record, it's rarely talked about, so I don't expect anybody to get it correct. But my dad was a composer. He got me into theater, but composer of episodic TV, independent film. So if you go look at Unwrapped from the Food Network from back in the day, or Animal Planet's Emergency Vets from back in the day, those were his things.
That's pretty legendary. So
All
like
right.
you watching that growing up, um, did that kind of instill into you like I want to do something similar or like talk to me about that too?
I had a really front row look or front row seat to his work because initially he was a jazz musician when I was a kid. So then when he first got the job offer, or when somebody recommended him to score Emergency Vets, he started in this extension on our garage in Centennial, Colorado, and then slowly as business picked up, was able to move and get a proper facility, and then like a proper studio, and then eventually moved into what was it was really cool. It was in the Comcast building, the headquarters in Denver, and they, it's not all for Comcast employees. It's like you can rent a facility in there. So I basically spent as his studio assistant. It was because dude, I've been hustling my whole life. I love to hustle. And so I was getting paid a pretty solid amount to be his studio assistant. I'll tell you about that in a second. But in this little corner in the Comcast building, it's like all post production. So it's very like high tech in its structure. Like the entire section is separated from the structure so that it's totally soundproof. And then even inside of that, like these little individual studios are sort of, I don't know if the term is like air gapped, but in between one another. And the door into his studio, this is the last studio that he was in because he's now deceased. But it was like opening a bank vault. Like you crank this huge steel thing and it goes, and you can feel it, like you have to push it. And then it was so aesthetic, all black, like black carpet on the floor, black padded walls. And then he had his big old grand piano in there, and then just this absolute console, dude. It looked like a spaceship command deck of like the latest and greatest of all technology, but it's all like music technology. And then the guy next door to him, Bruce Marshall, was like the sound engineer for a bunch of like the Backstreet Boys and for NSYNC when they were crushing it. So like that was like how I spent my time after school for a couple of years, was going in there and I would take the tapes that the producers would give him and I would chop them up and edit them and with the exact notes, and then I would copy them and then ship them out to his other composers who he hired, and just like get to watch this work happen.
So first and foremost, sorry for your loss, man. The of course, man. The second thing that I want to tap into is like you talking about that story now in hindsight. What were like some of the things that you were learning that today you realize like, oh, dude, that was like such a game changer for myself to be doing that type of job at that Comcast studio that I apply to my day today.
There's somewhere in my psyche, like I think that all humans have this desire for security and for coziness. And I think something about that put into my brain that being at a spaceship command center was like the ultimate, like I used to lull myself to sleep back before I had done all this tremendous amount of like inner work. To the way that I would like lull myself to sleep is I would play these little tracks in my head, and one of them was like being on a spaceship at this like sick command center. Another was like being on a mega yacht or something, or off like way off the coast. But it in terms of like what it actually taught me or what I learned from just being there, the man had an insane work ethic. It was nonstop from even when the time I was young, before things really picked up, or you especially have to work. You got to work hard all the time, but you definitely got to work hard in the very early stages. This unrelenting precision and attention to detail. The first time that I ever heard the phrase, insert whatever is in the details, it was always God is in the details. I never had heard, the devil is in the details until long after he passed. And obsessive punctuality, which wasn't just at work or watching him work, but those things I really picked up from him.
So you got your work ethic from him. Now, at what point is it when you're like a teenager or college years do you start to say, okay, like how can I channel this energy into something? Because I read that I think you tried out for your basketball team and didn't make it. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I don't know if my research is wrong there,
You're
but you
good.
tried out for your team. Um, from my understanding, you didn't make it. And then you were like, okay, well, I need to channel this energy differently. Am I off base there? Talk to me about your
No,
journey a little
no,
bit.
I don't think so. The channeling of the energy and like the focus and like all of that stuff didn't actually come until, I don't want to say far too late, because everything happens in its own perfect time, but that didn't happen until later college, like later undergrad. Then I was just, basketball was my first love. Like I really loved basketball. It's part of why all of my social media handles are 2-3. It's because of Michael Jordan.
Bro, that's
And
hilarious. I was thinking it was for that reason. That's
dude,
funny.
it's exactly that reason. And like, and again, it goes pretty like the deep cut there is, or I guess a good story of that is, I went to Montessori school, so I could definitely like read and write by the time that I had this letter sent. I don't know why I had my babysitter send it. Maybe because I had a crush on her and like I just want to give her a task to do or something. But I was like, yo, I need you to write a letter to Michael Jordan and the Bulls and just tell them like how much I love them. And so I got this like care package or this fan package back from the Michael Jordan fan club, and it had some stuff in it. But the only thing that I really remember was this poster that says, challenge me, tell me I can no longer fly, tell me I can't and I will soar above you and take a 5th world championship, like a bunch of stuff like that. And it hung above my bed for my entire, youth. And regrettably, it is lost. I don't know where it is. Like all my childhood room still looks the same. And there's a woman in the opera industry whose mom is like a high up exec at Nike. And I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'm looking for this very specific thing. Can you help? She's like, I got nothing. So I don't know if it's like nature or nurture that I was drawn to Michael Jordan and like has a lot of what we know about him, for better or for worse. Did I adopt that and try to be like that? Or was I drawn because I just something instinctively, even young, before I was even acting in that way, drew me to him? But yeah, dude, basketball. I loved basketball. So when I tried out for the freshman team, so I had only come from rec basketball where everyone is bad. And I didn't like hit puberty super early, but I was like 5'8" and I was a fat kid. So I was like 5'8" and like 190 pounds. So I just, would push people out of the way or swap balls or just like get to the rim. I thought I was okay. And then I just got completely crushed at these tryouts. And so then I just had something open to do. And my dad had actually encouraged me to go do theater because he had a friend who he had just met like through the Denver scene of artists and entrepreneurs. He was like, hey, you should go do Paul's company, this children's theater. And so I went and I did that. And I had been doing that for summers. And then in middle school, also, that started in middle school. And then in middle school, I was doing the musicals, the plays. But I wasn't thinking about it when I got to high school. And so I was like, oh, I'll just go do more of this. So no, it wasn't a channeling of energy consciously then.
And when you're doing the theater, there was no like thought of, oh, I want to get into acting. It was just more so, find a hobby kind of thing.
It was just something that I had done that like I had, I guess in a way I was just doing it. And I wasn't a standout really anything until my junior year. Like I was very all of my life I had been planning on being probably a lawyer and getting a theology or philosophy and or business or creative writing degree. And I always had been very interested in something having to do with business. It wasn't until I I got the role of Gaston in my high school musical, and we had a pretty large theater. It was like 800 seats, and we had a decent and somewhat full sized student orchestra, and we didn't have microphones. And I pretty much sounded the way that I sound now. Like, so picture like a 17-year-old like coming out on stage being like, right from the moment when I met her, and they're like, what is going on? And like cutting over the orchestra. And so then I got a lot of motion from that. And then the next year I did this, I did this competition for a bunch of schools that was like for college auditions for theater programs. And I won. I was not expecting to win this thing. In fact, I forgot that I was even an entrant in this category. I was so disappointed that I'd come like this close to hitting my goal of like 3 superior markings in this individual category. And that's when I started to be like, oh, I'm going to go audition for like the even more serious crop of schools that's in LA, Chicago, New York that they do their auditions. And then I went there and I had some good success and some good feedback. And actually it was there when the adjudicators were like, why aren't you trying to be an opera singer? And I thought that that was like a backhanded compliment. And now I realize it's like, no, you can just hear this instrument and you're like, it's like, what sports did you play?
Myself, I played basketball.
All right. So it would be like watching somebody play soccer or baseball. And you're like, you have a 42-inch vertical.
All right.
Why? And like, you're 6'7", dude. Like, oh wait, any young kids who see this are gonna be like 6'7".
6'7".
Damn it, that's so catchy. It's like so then I went and did that. But yeah, that's really when it took off, was like high school, when I started to realize like, oh, this, you could do this for real, for real.
That's nuts, dude. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny that you made that example with that analogy of basketball because in my high school there was a kid that he was from Africa and he was 6'10", 6'11", and he was playing soccer in Africa. And when he moved over here, they're like, bro, what are you doing? You have to play basketball. And he ended up playing at UConn and winning a national championship. But it's just like, you're in the wrong sport, bro.
Yeah, bro,
So
you're literally built. You didn't know that this thing existed. You're built for it. It's like, oh, cool.
100%. So
Yeah.
then at what point did you start taking opera seriously? Like, talk to me about that.
Dude, right away. Right
Right
away.
away.
And so opera was really the thing that locked me in that way, that kind of woke up this dormant focus and channeling and all consuming. Like, that's what really helped me become who I am. I was in this musical theater program, and the way that a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree is constructed is you don't really take gen eds. You are there to become a stage weapon from day one and get booked on Broadway before you leave. And that's exactly the right type of environment for me. But I was not mentally ready to approach that in the way that it needed to be approached, and certainly the way that I would approach it now. And there was something about getting into even though there's more similarities than there are differences, there was something about me deciding to become an opera singer that just like flipped this switch, where then I started to really see and become aware of all of the opportunities around me and become conscious of my time and my energy and what I was doing. And this, I don't know, it woke up something in me that was really powerful. There's a book by Hermann Hesse called Demian, and all of Hermann Hesse's books are basically the same, or they're about the same thing, just becoming who you are and individuation. And it says in Demian that one of the hardest things for a man to do is to actually like walk the path of his destiny. But when he does, all these doors open for him. And so even now, I tell myself, and it is one of my goals, to get back into professional classical music. But just the decision to organize my life and my identity around that more has made, even since doing that on this most recent time, because it comes in cycles,
Mm-hmm.
has made my life so much better. And so when I decided to do that, when I was, basically a kid or a late teenager, it just stuff that people said was never going to be able to happen for me happened.
Mm-hmm. And so you just mentioned like you want to get back into classical music. What was that point in your life where you went from opera to like what you currently do, which is like you help people with tonality and things of that sort?
Well, and so in between there, I'll give you the long version since we are on a podcast. Um, so like I said earlier, like I've always been interested in business. I remember being 7 years old. We didn't have a personal computer in the home. We had a typewriter, and I had typed out, do you want to, or maybe I printed it. I used something with the typewriter though. I was like, do you want to join my business? Like, call this number. This is like before we had area codes. It was like 843-9035. Sorry, mom. I just put your area code on the phone number.
I'll take it
No
out.
one's using the landline anyway.
Yeah.
And I would like stick that up around the neighborhood. I would always go, shovel dog poop, shovel snow, or, clean up dog poop, shovel snow, do leaves, whatever needed to be done in the neighborhood. I stole chocolates, very fancy chocolates from King Supers, the grocery store, and I would sell them to the rich kids at school the next day for 100% profit.
100%.
It's great.
Right.
So I had always had this sort of bent and desire to do business. And at the end of my undergrad, I got in really insane shape because I had just gotten a professional role for the first time, and the school let me take a month off to go and do it. I was playing. I got my equity card. This is musical theater, even though I was in an opera program. Frank Butler and Annie Get Your Gun at Lyric Stage in Irving, Texas. And with that money, because housing and transport and everything was provided, I went and I found the best trainer that I could in Denver, who had trained actually a lot of famous bodybuilding pros. And I was like, I need to get ripped, because actually, like right before then I had gotten rejected from this girl. And back then I was like, well, of course she rejected me because I don't look like I hopped off the pages of a comic book. Must be that. And so I got stupidly ripped, I locked into this plan. And then people started being like, what did you do? Like, how can I get like you? And I was like, I'll train you, because I love to teach. And that's how that started. So I had this fitness and nutrition consultancy going all during graduate school, and then also my my career. And then the pandemic came around, and that shut down everything that I had lined up stage wise. And so I went full time. I turned this side hustle into a full-time thing. And it just was not fulfilling, or I needed to grow in some ways. It wasn't working. And I decided that I wanted to get paid to just go focus on pure sales and maybe not be an entrepreneur for a little while. And that's how I got into cybersecurity sales. And that was really, I loved it. I was like a fish in water, especially at this one particular company that I landed at, Darktrace. All of the lore and everything that you read about them, for better or for worse, there's kernels of truth to it. But it really was it's a tough place to sell. It's an amazing place to be. You meet the best people. You learn so much. Stereotypical boiler room environment. And so somewhere in between there, somebody had asked me like, hey, can you do a workshop for these guys on this call to help them have a deeper, more commanding voice? I was like, yeah, probably. I was in like a a self-employed mastermind kind of thing, working on my fitness business. This is right before I went corporate. And I did this workshop and it worked like gangbusters. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I was doing that for a little while, but then I went full corporate and I sort of put that to the side. But I can't turn off teaching, and I can't turn off my own ideas and getting them out there. And so even though I was teaching and mentoring when I was in the corporate world, as like a team lead, a sort of player coach spot or position, I started this voice thing back up. And then when I got laid off, it had been built up a little bit. So I was like, look, how much more selling for other people do I need to do before I really am confident that I can sell my own thing? And then I just went for it, and that's been that ever since. So it's a combination of everything that I learned that helped make me comfortable on stage. Because look, I don't know, sometimes I'm a great actor, other times I'm garbage, but I'm comfortable on stage and comfortable cold calling C-suite, like global C-suite of these massive companies to pitch them a product in the cybersecurity world, which has its own, between vendors and buyers is very tense. And then also just my own way of being with myself that keeps me like locked in and overall healthy. As I've started saying with a little bit of dark humor, it's like, look, I don't know if I know anything, but what I do know is that like I haven't killed myself and I love my life. And so at the end of the day, those are my results. And then I basically just package all of that up, and that's what I do now.
I love what you said about the teaching piece, that it brings you like fulfillment and joy. For myself, I could resonate with that. There's just something awesome about helping another individual. A couple of years ago, I was doing personal finance boot camps, and I wasn't making a crazy amount of money from it, but it was cool to really just be like, dude, like this person's life is going to be better because I did something to help them out. Now, when we talk about, the coaching, right? And for myself, from my understanding, it's like you teach individuals to speak in a better way. What are some of the nuances that maybe people don't do, that it's kind of like common mistakes or something along those lines? I'm curious to tap into this because for myself, like I've throughout high school and college, I would get that repetitive comment like, bro, you're so monotone. And I've tried to watch some YouTube videos to help me do some exercises. But I still don't feel like I'm at that place where, I'm like very confident in my ability to speak.
Yep. Sorry, I'm getting pulling out. I left my journal in Scotland. I just got back. So I was like looking for a note, like my typical notepad to write on, because I want to keep track of every little bit of this. The big things, I think that the first thing that, and look at this isn't even working. Great. So I think people have a lot of ideas that don't address the root problem and that lead them to major in the minors. So people think that it's about inflection. Do you inflect upward or downward? Nobody considers that you're forgetting that you can also inflect straight across and you can go neither. People think that it's about having a lower voice. People think that it's about having a less nasally voice, this or that. Like those are just the aesthetics. And the first thing that I do with people is I work on the coordination of their voice to really help them find their most authentic and beautiful, effortless sound. Like it just requires some coordination. And everybody has access to it. Like nobody has an ugly voice. There's just voices that are improperly coordinated or inefficiently coordinated. But one of the main frameworks of mine that I teach from is called the 7 skills of tonality. And the first 2 skills, they deal with that coordination of the voice to make it strong, solid, attractive, flexible, charismatic, authentic, everything. And also durable, so that you can be on a plane, you can be in a bar, you can be at a sporting event, you can be at a conference on the floor all day, you can have meetings all day, and you can basically sound the same in all of these rooms and be heard, and then rely on your voice the next day and the day after that, and so on and so forth. But the rest of the skills are soft skills. And one in particular I have found, if you will just solve for that, because I'm very interested in linchpins, if we solve for one thing, everything else is redundant or the friction is removed. And so resonance, articulation, imagination, mindset, it's the transcript of the dialogue running in your brain, intention, subtext, and stakes. And for me, intention is the thing that tends to have a light bulb go off in my clients' minds the most. And also is that linchpin. And it is, the way that I explain it is that the macro intention, when you communicate, has to switch from I am speaking because I want to be validated,
Mhm.
to I am speaking only because I want to help you win. And
Mm.
when you do that, that makes everything else that people struggle with, like, oh, I say too many filler words, or I'm not comfortable in a pause, or I talk too fast, or this or that, or I don't speak when I know that I should. That allows that, like, gives people permission, or it helps them reframe their role in that situation so that they don't have those problems anymore. Because if you're just trying to help somebody win, why would you jump in during a pause? You only do that because you're nervous and you're trying to regulate yourself, or because
Mhm.
you want, or why would you be listening to respond? Because then it's just about you. No, if you're trying to help somebody win, you're listening to understand, and you're comfortable in a pause because you might say something else that is going to help me help you win. You are more calm because you're not trying to impress and it's not about you. And in general, you basically just act less weird because you're not focused on yourself. And we only start acting weird when we focus on ourselves.
This reminds me of my freshman year in college, in community college, my first ever class. It was a psychology class. And for myself, I've been fairly introvert, right? And this professor talked about something similar with, he called it the spotlight effect, where it's basically saying that, you know, myself, like, let's say being in a social setting and being awkward is a byproduct of thinking that everyone in the room is focused on me, when in fact everyone's probably thinking about themselves and like how everyone's focusing on them. And bro, like, I don't know what that thing changed the way I just approach social settings for at least a year and a half. Like, I just felt a lot more comfortable in that. And to your point, like, just to backtrack, you said people spend too much time trying to be validated versus effectively trying to provide value to the other individual. That's like the philosophy that you have.
Yeah. When you're trying to provide value to somebody else, you're not trying to provide it so that you can be told how valuable you are. It's like, dude, I don't care if I get credit. I
Mm,
I don't need it. I just want to help you win. When
interesting.
you do that, when you can start showing up to be of service instead of being of self, everything changes. And I love that example that you gave because yeah, nobody is really thinking about you. Most people are where I was just talking about, which is they're only thinking about themselves. And so when you can, the spotlight effect, what that makes me think of is the observer effect. You know this? You familiar with this idea?
No, no.
It's a sort of like quantum physics 101, and I'm going to get out of my depth if I talk about anything more than this, but it's like when you observe an atom at like at the atomic level, I guess. Sorry, it sounds like way smarter than I, or way more knowledgeable than I am. That atom starts behaving differently because I think the technology needed to capture that atom to observe it disturbs its field of what it's already doing, and so it behaves differently. In humans, when you start to observe yourself, you can go about that in two ways. You can do that in a way that basically that disturbs that field, or in a way that calms down the disturbances. So it's almost like with the right calibration of observance of self, of watching yourself, it has the opposite effect of the atom under observation. So when you observe yourself in this way, you notice that there is stuff constantly going on in your body that you're just not sensitized to, and that it's always constantly changing. And so if you can get used to observing that without disturbing it, and then you just let that natural process of change happen, you are less disturbed and less clingy to one thing that's happening in your body. And so then when the natural, because that's happening everywhere else outside of you, when then you experience something that changes and you don't get what you want, for example, you are not disturbed by it. But it's a very nuanced thing. Whereas if you're looking at yourself with judgment, being like, oh, you should have done this, you should have done this, you should have done this, then your state is disturbed and you're basically like trying to strike a pose. That's what happens to the atom. Is the atom, it's basically like moving around, and then all of a sudden that technology hits it and it goes, I got to strike a pose now. And so when we do that to ourselves, we start performing. We're like, oh, I need to be this certain way, I need to be this way, I need to be this way. It's like, no. When you're, as soon as you're performing a state, you're not being the state. Everyone can tell, and they're like, that's weird, what's going on here? And then you get in your head about it. So is that making sense? Like I just started articulating that distinction and like those two concepts like last week. So it's a little fresh.
No, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm just trying to like compile this into my own life and just think about it. And even from a place of just like, whenever I'm in this mode where I'm just thinking about the people around me, it just makes the relationship that much better. And to give you an example, like I thought about one of my best friends recently, and I just called them, and we were just talking about board games, and I sent him like a random board game. It was like $20, but like that only came through me not being in my own head. And I feel like for myself, dude, that's the thing that I struggle with, where I'm just always thinking about the day-to-day things that I sometimes just forget. It's like, dude, you just step out your own life and just look at the people around you. And when I do that, I generally feel more intentional. I feel like the relationships are better. And ultimately, the conversations, like the way that I'm able to communicate, I'm able to be more present and actually listen, which another struggle of mine earlier on, to give you an example, even with the podcast, man, like when I first started, and maybe I attribute it to just not having much experience, I would hear the individual, but I wouldn't really fully listen. I'd be so like paranoid of like, oh dude, like don't mess up, or dude, you better have a fire question to ask them when they're done speaking. And that created a less of a engaging, authentic connection with the individuals. And it's all been through listening that's helped me ultimately, you know, have better conversations too. So
Yeah, dude, it's about the people that we meet. You can have the most amazing material experience, but if you don't have anyone to share it with, it doesn't matter. You can be having the worst material experience of all time, but if you have great people to share it with, it's like, this is the best thing ever. I wouldn't trade this for the world. So I want to run something by you. This is more fleshed out. I've been thinking about this all year and sharing it all year. What is monotone?
monotone, in my opinion, is potentially having that same range consistently. Maybe I'm wrong there.
It's your opinion. Mono, one. I think monotone is a failure to lead your audience's attention, not about your vocal gymnastics. Because who stereotypically would we think of as the least monotone persona or type? Like when you think of somebody who's totally not monotone, who do you think of?
Say
What
like a
job do they have?
cheerleader or something, right?
Okay, cheerleader, but they're not really speaking. They're just like shouting.
Right. Uh, maybe like a president. I feel like they're pretty good with tonality. An anchor, maybe.
That's the one I was looking for. We're going to get into the definition of tonality here in a second. So a news anchor will talk like this, and then they will talk like this, and then we can tell when they're about to make their point because they will talk like this. But that's also kind of monotone. Because my eyes are going to glaze over. They're like, there was a cat stuck in a tree, and then there was a gigantic ambush where 30 people died and were shot, and there was a Richter scale 10 earthquake just last week. And you're like, what? That all sounded the same. What is going on? What do I pay attention to? Like, we know when it's going to end because of the cadence, like we see in Western music. So I don't think that it's about vocal dancing. I think that it's about you getting really clear about how you feel about the subject, how you feel about yourself delivering the topic, and then how you want your listeners to feel about you and the topic and you delivering that message. So the clearer that you can get about that and the less shy that you can be about that, the more, the less friction you're going to have in leading your audience's attention, and the range in which you typically are speaking in is going to expand, or some variable is going to intensify or have some more contrast, because you're going to do that subconsciously. So monotone is really a sort of disconnection or dissociation from what you're feeling and experiencing.
So you mentioned, all right, so you mentioned a couple points, but for this one, you said it's not necessarily about the ranges or the vocal gymnastics, as you call it. It's more so having an understanding on how to convey your message. Is that like first principles thinking there for that?
Yeah, so there's everything that your voice is capable of, right? Which I cover in the first two of those 7 skills, and everything that makes that possible. There's this other idea that I teach called like the 3 resonances. So resonance is when two bodies meet and their sympathetic vibrations like amplify one another. And in physics and in sound, that's like literal amplification. So in the voice, that's the sound coming off of your vocal folds meeting with your resonating tract or resonating chambers in your body. And so people don't really need to have a lower pitched voice, because what they really need is they need a deeper voice, a voice with more depth. That's a color and a characteristic. You can measure it in a similar way that you can measure pitch, but they're different things. And so you can have a high pitched voice with a lot of depth, and it's going to have those qualities that you think you're going to get by shoving your voice down in the basement outside of its authentic range. So we train in resonance because that helps you be heard, it does everything. But then we train in, the organization of your ideas, because a lot of times people who come to me, their expertise in the way that they are perceived and the way that they sound does not match. So then some of that's about how we organize the information that we have in our heads. Like, how do you tell a good story? How do you answer things off the cuff? How do you stay on track? All of this stuff I go over. But what gives an idea? What makes you say, wow, Gabriel, that idea really resonated with me? It's your idea meeting my interest and my needs, and then that idea has resonance. So it's about relevance. It's got to be relevant to me. And then we have the last piece of the puzzle on which I believe everything rests, which is we need the individual to have resonance. We need the individual's actions and their identity to match and meet and then amplify. So if you've got this perfectly constructed, awesome, coordinated voice and this message that is just so persuasive and memorable and vivid, but you don't believe that you're the guy, or you don't believe in what you're sharing, people are going to feel that. Some people will go for it, but other people will be like, I don't know. Something's a little off there. And so that is really what I work on in a holistic roundabout, or not roundabout, but like a holistic 360 at all times, looking for one or all of those things when I work with people.
Dude, this is pretty nuts. Like hearing you explain all these things in detail makes me realize that this is like no different than like working out at the gym. Like there are so many different facets of my voice or sound or the way I communicate that can be refined. And it's so fascinating for me because it's like, dude, I can tell how much knowledge you have in this. It's insane. A question that I have for you is, when it comes to communicating, how, if you had to give a percentage, right, how much of that is attributed to just like what comes out of our mouth versus just like appearance, whether that's clothes or like haircut or the watch that people have? Like, do you have that kind of percentage breakdown, or have you obviously you've thought about that, but I just want to hear your take on it.
So I think a lot of what it sounds like you're describing, say like a first impression, for
Yeah.
example. Okay, so there's this idea or a phenomenon called the halo effect. And that's where, like, why do attractive people seem to have less friction getting what they want? I don't know, because you just look at them and you project your bias onto them. Like, this person must be smarter, they must be more competent, they must be more experienced, they must be this or that. And the voice, with the voice, you can amplify your halo effect at the speed of sound, because your voice tells the world who you are. So when you have all of these things lined up, then it's like, it's like walking in a place with a perfectly built a suit that was not off the rack, not made to measure, truly bespoke from an amazing house, and everything about your appearance is lined up. Like, think about that. If you open your mouth and you can tell that this person is afraid, and you can tell that their voice just doesn't match what you think is going to come out, and in a way that's, yeah, it doesn't work. It sort of like sends you back a little bit, and they can't really communicate their ideas. You're like, whoa, this doesn't match. This isn't put together. But when it matches, then then that's more of that resonance, more of that amplification. So your voice, there was a famous trainer guru back before the internet even existed named Zig Ziglar. And in one of his books, he says probably the most overlooked area in the world of sales training has to do with the use of your voice, because it really is everything. It's how we connect with people. It's how we express, or largely how we express ourselves. And when you open your mouth and say something in any situation, when everything is calibrated correctly, people are either going to pay attention or they're going to ignore you. So it is just as important, and belongs and deserves just as much, if not more, consideration than all of those external material things that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, the reason why I ask is because, they talk about online and just like different things about like pretty privilege. And if I could look back in high school, I remember there would be like cliques, and typically like the prettier girls would all be friends. And it's like, I'm always curious how that plays out once people are in the real world and they're applying for jobs, or they're building a business or doing a presentation. Like, how much of that is a factor? I would argue maybe it's a decent amount, maybe
But I think
more than.
it's probably much bigger than decent, dude. Like,
Yeah.
we're not really thinking beings. We are cement. It's like, why do people buy? People buy based on emotion, and they justify later with logic. Shout out to Bowtied Sales Guy. That's the opening of his course. Which, if you go buy it, you will recognize the voice. And your boy wrote the tonality section. But really amazing information in there that talks about this. So when you speak in this certain way, it also calms you down. And so you want to be around people who are like you in whatever way that you are filtering that for. And that happens largely unconsciously. Like, you can become conscious of it, but that pull is still going to be there. And when you are confident, and when you are not driven by your own ego and need for validation, and you're just at base calm and relaxed, you are going to draw different experiences and different people to you, because you will be different than how you were. So yeah, there's some external factors in there, but then it also just depends on what you're filtering for.
Noted. Yeah, man. I mean, dude, Michael, this has honestly been huge eye opener for myself. I've never spoke to someone on tonality or how my speech could impact, what I do.
We got to define tonality. What do you call in tonality?
Uh, so I think for myself, again, I know very little of this subject, but tonality for myself, I always assumed it was like the ranges, in terms of like how I speak, if I could go high or low. That's my definition.
So some people would call it that. They might call it how you say what you say, but I like to get more specific. It's the total amount of signal that's parsable from the noise that is in your sound. So the more clearly you can think about each layer of the information that you are trying to get across, the more precise your tonality is going to be, provided you also can match that with physical coordination so that you know you're going to get the same output every time.
Can you give me an example of those layers and like how the physical coordination comes to play? Like, because for myself, like I hear you talking about the physical coordination, and I remember watching a YouTube video of like a compilation of how presidents talk, and I would, go in the mirror and act like Obama or whatever. But can you give me some examples of what you mean by that?
Yeah, so you can, this is one of the reasons why I believe opera used to be so thriving as an industry, and now it is. There are less people lining up around the block to go and see the reigning superstar of the day, because now people are focused. What feels like they're focused primarily on the technical precision and mastery of their instrument, without considering the human experience that the composer and the librettist are trying to get them to communicate. So when you, for example, like I'm thinking of this line of text or this one phrase from Brahms' Requiem, and it's just a vowel, just ah, like the word is ah, and it's not like leading to something. It just was like ah. Okay, well we could say ah from the pit of despair. You're just so heartbroken, and just like your dog has just been killed, everyone's dead, like you're broke, like everything, like you lost your leg,
Jesus.
like the worst, and there's no hope. You
Mhm.
could say ah like you've just seen the like you've just had the most beautiful revelation, and everything is together, and all is love. Or you can say oh, like oh, like it's just like a fun surprise. The deep, and then this could apply to, you say hey Gabriel, or hey Gabriel, two very different things, same text, same speed. But the more that we can get in there and be like, all right, like how do you really feel about Gabriel? How do you really feel about like what's going on with you in this situation? Like what are you, if you can only say those words, what's the other information that you're trying to communicate in there? Like it's embedded in there. The more what are the stakes? What happened? Like what do you want Gabriel to do here? This is what I call micro intention. A single specific action once this conversation is ended or that interaction is ended. What's at stake if Gabriel doesn't take that action? So you can play with the stakes from my coffee is cold to everyone that me and Gabriel love dies and goes to hell forever. Totally different stakes. When the clearer that you get about all of this stuff, and the more you commit to it and the more you connect with it, the more that ah, or whatever it is that you say, is going to be expressing that despair and that heartbreak, that hopelessness, or that elation. You can get the job done just by saying despair, heartbreak, or elation. But I want to get in there and see every little thing that's possible. I want to leave no stone unturned.
Right. And what you just mentioned, for some reason, it triggered like this thought that I had as well in terms of like communication via camera versus in person. I've still haven't felt that feeling when it's like in person when I speak to someone. There's just something so different about it. From your experience, like what is it that's like so different? Like maybe not the obvious things, but it's like there's just something about that in person that when you speak to someone, it's like more connection.
It is exactly that. You can perceive so much more. You can feel so much more kinesthetically. Like, you can be around somebody who's in a really foul mood and they don't need to say anything. You don't even need to see them. And like, if you're really tuned in, like you can feel it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
even acoustically, the voice, you can fill up an opera house without a microphone like that. Hearing or feeling any kind of like voice in the room, not that you like have to be singing or speaking like that in the room, but it's like you can there's such a tactile nature to all of this. Even just being able to like really look and see your pupils, read micro expressions, like feel little things, enjoying a moment of silence or a pause in person here is way different than us just like having it here. Humans are designed for connection, and I believe that so much of the anxiety and the angst that perpetuates, I don't know, I feel like I'm riding the thin line of potential malapropisms here, is from this like total how fractioned everything is, like how disconnected everybody is. Like just getting in person is so much better.
And what's your take on like, a lot of people, and including myself, I said this earlier, right? Like, oh, I consider myself relatively introvert. Do you think this is innate in us, or are we just through the experiences we become extrovert, introvert? And if let's say someone categorizes themselves as introvert, can they get out of it? You know?
Well, I think that there's, and this is a lot of like, what the end, one of the end goals of what I teach is like, yeah, I want everybody to, really what I want people to have is more agency so that they can go and do that for which they're built. And when you quit thinking about yourself in a certain way for a long enough time at increasing levels of depth, I think that you build self love in a way. And what that allows for you to do is to separate shame from your actual identity. So that if something bad happens externally, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I'm good. Like, it doesn't say anything about me, the person. I'm not like worth less because that thing happened. And I notice even in your framing of that language, or the language that you're framing this example with, it's like introversion is bad and extroversion is the desired end goal, which is like, no, that's just who you are. So, and also like, what is it? It's what charges, what fires up your battery? When I am around people, I get more ideas and I have a massive surge of energy. Like I already have ideas and I already have energy on my own. When I'm around people, I get a massive surge of energy, more ideas, and I really don't ever tire of it. It really doesn't exhaust me. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to like go take a little break and just chill. Like, oh, I'm glad to be alone, but I don't really get tired of it. Whereas my understanding of introversion is that the opposite happens. And so there really is it's just like, figuring out how to use what you have and then not shame yourself for it so that you're not like, oh, I wish I was an extrovert. It's like, no, this is great. The way that I am is a superpower if you will just learn to leverage it. It's not unlike training, dude. I tie basically everything back to training. If you can't do a certain movement pattern because of something, that doesn't make you like you don't belong less in the gym, and you have no less of a right to train your body and build it. What's that quote? Beauty and strength of which his body is capable. No less right to pursue that than any one of the rest of us. We just need to figure out how to do the most with what you have and what is comfortable for you that you're going to adhere to. Just like introversion versus extroversion.
So, like, one of the things that you said that's super powerful that I resonate with well is like how you get energy from people. And I was reading, I think it was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell in chapter 2, where he said they did a study in Italy where they took like this small town, and they were like on paper the oldest population. And when they were doing all the research, like they were checking the food and all these different categories. But what they ultimately realized is like these people were living so long because they had a sense of community where every night they were just like playing dominoes or just hanging out. And, I resonate with that in my own life and trying to find that tribe, find those people. And this is a big reason why I love doing the podcast, because it gives me an excuse to just like chat with people for like an hour every week or so. So for myself, man, I really resonate with that piece, man. But dude, there's so much here that I'm still thinking about in the back end of like what you told me about communication. I really went into this thinking like, oh, bro, Michael's about to give me some voice lessons and I'm gonna be like the best communicator of all time. But I'm starting to realize that it's not effectively like what I thought it was. And I hope that people watch this, listen to what you just said, and apply it, because I know for a fact, maybe you could tap into this too. Like for your clients, do they have that same kind of intuition beforehand, thinking, "Oh, this guy's about to fix my vocals, and I'm gonna just come out here like a new
Yeah,
person"?
people will think like, oh, I'm just a couple of me, like away from this or that. And I'm like, no, like we're gonna do a little bit of that, dude. Like we're gonna get your voice opened up, and it's gonna like you're gonna get that, but there's so much more to it than that. And yeah, that's basically, you know, I'll get to working with somebody and we'll get that down, and then I'm like, cool. So why don't you sound like that? And they're like, or why don't you actually like use that? And then they say something like, oh, well, even though I'm the big dog in the room, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder, I'm the this, I'm the that. Uh, and these people are selling me on something. I won't speak because I think that I am going to embarrass myself every time that I open my mouth. And I'm like, that is what we should be spending some more time on. And then doing that through, you know, whenever that is being explored, like I said, everything is basically happening constantly all at once in my studio or when you work with me. So when you're explaining that to me or you're this or that, I'm like, your voice has got to be on. You got to stay in that gear that we just found, that coordination that we just found. And so that's, you know, then we get to the depth of that.
And something interesting that came up in my head as well when you just mentioned that, right? Like these CEO top dogs, right? They have a sense of, you know, maybe instilling confidence and having a little bit of ego, and like to your point, you being a huge Michael Jordan fan, and so am I, right? Like Michael Jordan, from what I saw in the Last Dance documentary, this guy was like the ultimate alpha, right? And I feel like to have that Jordan mentality, he was very much like, dude, I'm the freaking GOAT. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. And it's very much like revolved around himself. And a part of the equation as well, though, you talked about like, you can't be that self-aware because ultimately you'll be maybe a little bit robotic or awkward and overthink it. So it's like, how do you marry those two of having like the confidence of Michael Jordan, but also just being focused on the individual that you're speaking to and providing value? Like, I feel like those two are hard for me to connect right
Yep.
now.
All right. Let me break this down for you. The example that you gave about Michael Jordan, I don't think is Michael Jordan. I think you're describing shades of Kobe and definitely shades of LeBron. Outrageous physical talent that is trained and honed and everything, but it's all about them. Michael Jordan has never referred to himself as the GOAT. When they lost, you know, like how does LeBron take a loss? He's crying. He's leaving the game first. He's not shaking hands. He's like blaming his teammates in a post-game conference. Kobe is hogging the ball. MJ is like, okay, if I pass to him, we're gonna win. Okay, like he's being tough on people because he wants to win and he knows that it's on him for them to win because nobody else is going to step up and do it. So he's just like, all right, fine. Yeah, I have all these attributes, but just by temperament of being the one who is proactive, right? Leadership is not reactive, it is proactive. You see something that is wrong, nobody's stepping in to do it. Like you're not waiting, you're just making it happen.
Mhm.
I think that Michael Jordan has, for all of his competitiveness that we see in The Last Dance, like there's kind of like way less ego in a certain way there. Like he just likes to compete and play the game and push himself. And I think that those other guys, you know, like he says he loves to win, but like hates to lose. But those other guys, it feels very much, and then we can see from their actions like it's about them. So the way that I strike that balance or seek to strike that balance is that, dude, my standards are very high. Now you can like I meet everybody where they're at, but there are certain things where I'm like, no, that's do better. You know, we're talking about, and this is why one of the reasons why I like working with CEOs so much is because they're the busiest, they have the most weight, the most pressure, but they are the most curious and they are almost to a T so ready to be in that white belt mentality and ready to learn. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm so busy. I have to see you this week. Well, I'm so ready because it took me a long time to say to people like that. I had my first CEO client when I was in my late 20s, CEO of a big chain. And I noticed like I was reserved in how I would communicate with him because I was so whatever. And now I'm just like, that's bullshit. You can't do that. Try it again. Better. Like I just am straight up with them because it's not, they're here for a result. And if I'm not tough with, like, I'm being paid to be tough. If I am not tough, then nobody's getting results and they're wasting their money. And I'm going to regret not pushing somebody. And dude, I am, you know, some people don't come back. Some people
Is
keep
it
on coming back and keep on recommending me.
right? And from your experience working with all these CEOs, is there like a common line in which they all typically communicate a certain way, or is it all over the place?
No, everyone has their strong suits, their weak points, and one of the common themes is curiosity. Curiosity and sensitivity and a real embracing of the mentorship and the vision casting of the role.
Can you repeat that last piece? That curiosity piece of the casting of the role. What do you mean by that exactly?
So
Like
like
finding the right people?
the CEO's job is to first and foremost to cast the vision for the company. And but they also lead and mentor people directly or indirectly, right? Like leadership is the highest leverage skill and it trickles down. So they're really sensitive to everything that we were talking about earlier, to perception. They see all of the moving pieces and they consider them, and they're very curious about human nature and about how to connect more and how to win more and how to lead more effectively and how to know themselves more effectively, because that's really what this is about, is like the main quest of life, I believe, is to know thyself, which is not like, oh, Gabriel likes, chocolate, not vanilla. It's like, it's not about that. And the way that, we can only know other people to the depth to which we know ourselves. Even like despite what they will show us, like you can still perceive things. But the way that you complete that main quest is by going on side quests. And so if, their side quest is like, I need to learn how to, like I listened to two of my guys today, a CEO and then a president of a foundation that collaborate together on an earnings call. And they are really keenly aware that how they sound and how they come off on these calls has a direct impact on their bottom line and on the future of their company. And so they are open to coming to work with me to improve that. And like that gets, you're going to sound better. Like I'm getting you results, those surface level results immediately. But then they're curious about the mechanisms that make that work. All of the other stuff that we were talking about. Even just the pointing out of like, hey, have you asked these people this question? And they're like, oh, no, I haven't. I'm like, why didn't you ask this question? And they're like, oh, because I'm thinking about myself. So they need somebody to kind of hit them like that, and they appreciate it.
Find it pretty nuts that none of this is taught in school, honestly. Like I went through high school, college, and to my knowledge, I don't remember anyone even giving me a 10% of the pointers you've given me in the past hour. Um, it's pretty bizarre. I don't understand why. But I think it's super important, like going back to all the things you said about just like how to communicate, being selfless, listening to the other person. Ultimately, all these things compound and just make you a better person. But damn, dude, like I really appreciate all these gems you've been giving me today, man. Like this is nuts.
It's my
This
my
is nuts.
absolute pleasure, dude. I think you got to come and work with me, and then I can keep on hitting with you with gem after gem.
100%, man. I hopefully in 2027, the beginning, I'm flying to New York, so we definitely need to catch up. We could do a podcast in person. That's my plan for next year, to do these in person. So
I think
Hopefully we can make that happen, man.
it's the right move, brother. New York City awaits you.
Yeah, dude. So, Michael, is there anything in the next like couple years, like you talked about like finding oneself, like how effectively are you doing that in your own life for the foreseeable future, like for yourself?
Brother, I hit a real true iconic rock bottom in my life about four years ago and a month. 4 years ago and a month. And since then, I have consciously been doing basically nothing else other than going on side quests to try to complete the main quest. And I believe that that is an ongoing practice and process, but I believe very much that I am approaching the end of that major work. So, dude, it's been all consuming, and yeah, I'm very blessed to be able to have the opportunity to roll everything that I learn about everything directly, inner work, knowing myself related or not, into what I share with others. But yeah, it's been so much EMDR therapy, so many psychedelic, like guided psychedelic medicine journeys, so many, 700 reps of this very intense type of journaling designed around like reframing stories, identifying and reframing stories. Um, I attempted one, left after half, and then completed a SN Goenka Vipassana retreat that I'm just constantly trying to integrate and learn. And I take a lot of L's, dude. I take so many L's and I love it. I love it.
Yeah, me too, bro. Like the thing you said about like taking those side quests, I could resonate with that so hard because in the past 10 years working at W2, for some reason, I've always had an itch to do some side quests. And for the past couple of years, has been making content online. And a lot of times it's like either family or friends are just like, oh, like like, what are you trying to do with this? Or like even like the podcast. And this in itself is like, dude, this is a major side quest that I've gone on, but it's like in hindsight, I look back, I'm like, okay, I understand why I started doing this and I see all the value from it. And it was just from the context of getting out of my own black box of my life and just thinking like, why not, try this thing out and pursue something that maybe is unconventional. And for myself, it's like not having that ego of caring about what people are going to think about me. So when I started making content online, I was like 26 and I started at TikTok at a time where it was just a bunch of uh, people dancing. A lot of people were confused. And honestly, at first, it made me feel a little like, oh man, I feel kind of cringe. But ultimately, it's literally led me to talk to amazing people. And it's all through that one decision I made to take that side
Dude,
quest on
it's like
TikTok.
life is so amazing, dude. It's like just get in and live and let go and go with the flow. It's just incredible. Like when you this came to me, like I get all these little what I just call Hewittisms now, like these things that come to me, and like I'm not the first person to say something like it or even the exact thing, but it's like I came to it from first principles is mine. What you hold, you cannot feel. And like if you're trying to like control and like do everything in life and like everything has to go your way, like you don't actually get the thing that is going to be even better for you. Are you familiar with Naval Ravikant?
Dude, so I actually had, the book, The Almanac of Naval.
Yeah.
I had the author a couple weeks ago, bro,
Well, so
on
what
my
you're talking
podcast.
about is specific knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, your side quests are just specific knowledge. That was the first name of my LLC that I just changed to Executive Influence Systems. But in like on my business credit card, it still says specific knowledge. That's all following side quests is, and you can't predict. And at this point, I've stopped trying to mastermind every little thing. Like I'm like, look, what do I really feel called to? I really feel called to share my poems that I've been writing that mean a lot to me about nothing having to do with business or the use of the voice or whatever. I really feel called to share them. I really feel called to share these other essays on just like this, on some of the related stuff to what I teach, but like more directly on, what is healing? How does everybody get this wrong? How's everybody like, why don't people actually change or do anything with it? How do we get away from therapized buzz speak? I don't know where that's going to lead. I just feel compelled to do it. And at this point, I just have enough trust from enough instances where I'm like, something will happen. Somebody will read that and be like, I want to come work with you on this thing that you're not even talking about. Do you do this? I'll be like, yeah, I do. I just trust, dude. Like, life's a big adventure. It's amazing.
Dude, that piece that you said is super powerful and it's so relevant. The part that it's like a lot of times we want this thing and we're like, bro, like why isn't this happening for me? And then you get something 10 times better. You're like, oh, okay, I understand it. And dude, just to give you the prime example, like when you mentioned the Almanac and Evolve, you saw my face light up because that author Eric Jorgensen, if you were to tell me 5 years ago, I was doing like live streams on Instagram stories, just reading his book to like two people, and one of them being my mom, I would have never thought I would have the opportunity to speak to him. And it's just like that whole serendipity of life. It's like you don't know where your journey is going. And to your point too, of like a lot of times we try to like, dude, grab it by the horns and say like, dude, I want to will myself to do this one thing, but there's like bigger plans and we just gotta, you know, go with the flow in the sense of like where your journey is taking you, man. But dude,
There are bigger plans. Indeed, dude. Indeed. The path is only illuminated as you walk it. That's why you got to get started. And then everything makes sense in hindsight.
100%, like to leave people off with some slight motivation, right? When I started this podcast, so like I showed you this, I keep this
Yeah.
next to my desk, bro. Like I bought this for like $15 on Amazon. I had my iPhone and I would just press record. I wasn't thinking about the quality of the audio or the video. I just knew I had to get going. And to anyone watching this, do that thing, man. Do that thing. Don't be afraid. Try it out, and hopefully it will lead you to good things. But Michael, man, we definitely got to run this back in person in the
100%.
beginning of the year. And
Hundo P, dude. Hundo P.
yeah, dude. But dude, this was an amazing conversation, man. I know for sure people are going to gain value. So I just want to thank you again, sir.
I got you, my brother. Find your voice, unleash your voice, go forth and speak boldly.
Let's go.
All
Cheers,
right.
man.
Cheers.